Good morning, everyone. I'm Meteorologist Taylor Stephenson, joining you from the Weather Center here at 13 News Now, talking about some of the snow flurries we're seeing at the moment here in Hampton Roads and northeastern North Carolina. There's a few things we have to talk about today for this late morning stream, and I'll be back again at 1 p.m. for an early afternoon stream. But we're going to talk more about the snow that we're seeing now, plus we'll talk more about what we could see from snow accumulations. Then we'll move on to the biggest story of the day, the brutal cold weather that's on the way for us late tonight into tomorrow morning that will bring us single-digit wind chills. It will be a very, very cold night, the coldest air we've seen all season so far. So bundle up, gear up for what will be just an absolute frigid night here in Hampton Roads in northeastern North Carolina. Right now, here's what I'm tracking with radar. You can see our radar is showing much more rain than there is snow. It's interesting because when I was here just about 2 hours ago tracking the models, seeing what would happen with the snowfall, excuse me, it did bring much more widespread rainfall to the picture than it did, and it is showing now. So for those who may have wanted a little bit more of a snow flurry, I will say in Norfolk it definitely is flurrying. Outside right now we definitely have some flurries ongoing, but it's just not as widespread as the models projected. So let's go ahead and zoom in, and I'm going to stop this time lapse to show what's happening here. A few isolated flurries getting from Williamsburg down to down Highway 64 through Grove, Lee Hall, and pretty much stopping at the intersection of Highway 173 and Highway I-64, excuse me. Going up to Gloucester Point and then parts of White Marsh, we're also seeing some of that very light snow, then offshore of the northern neck as well. On the eastern shore, we're seeing some flurries near Exmoor, Painter, Melfa, Cedarview, and Smithfield. But just to the eastern portions of the eastern shore peninsula area, we are seeing just some light offshore showers and flurries. Now, the heart of Hampton Roads actually seeing some of the biggest flurries across the area at the moment, from Fox Hill down through Hampton, Black River, Newport News, the Willoughby Beach area, Willoughby Spit, Glenwood Park, Brookfield Park, and Belleville, seeing some of that snow, including Cretanton. So we're seeing a few isolated flurries there with some rain through Suffolk. I do want to see, and I'm curious what the temperatures are right now. Right now it's just barely above freezing. Temperature is in the lower 30s to the middle 30s. Excuse me. So it is technically cold enough to snow because most of the atmosphere is most likely at or below 32 degrees. But it's definitely going to be troublesome to stick. Now, I do want to go through our sky views here and see what we're seeing from our sky view cameras, because this can also help us tell the story. Right now, from our camera there from Chamberlain and Hampton, just seeing very cloudy conditions, winds picking up just a bit. I'm looking around the area to see if I can see anything significantly. All I see is a few drops on the camera for most areas, but I'll show you the Norfolk Botanical Garden. So I'm going to go into the studio and change that camera. And from the Norfolk Botanical Garden, you can see that there are some drops, like water drops, on the camera. Now, when I was outside and it was flurrying, I will say that it was snow, but then as soon as it hit the windshield, it became kind of like a slushy, wet mess. So this could be leftover water from snowflakes, but obviously can't tell right now. And from this camera, I can't even see if it's snowing at all at the moment. The flakes would definitely be pretty tiny. But I haven't seen any significant things from our cameras so far. But I do want to go through my actual radar app on my phone to see if anybody's reporting snow around the area. Someone reported ice pellets about 45 minutes ago, so sleet. Someone reported snow about 30 minutes ago in Norfolk. Some said that it's sleet and snow mixed together. In Virginia Beach, there was some snow. Mixed precipitation in Virginia Beach. Same with Chesapeake, mixed rain and snow. And then in Suffolk, they're saying it's ice pellets and snow. So we're getting reports around the area of seeing some sleet, snow, rain mix, which makes sense. And then as you head down to Elizabeth City and Nags Head, watching for some widespread light to moderate rainfall, so Poplar Branch, through the Albemarle Sound, down through the Outer Banks, including Kill Devil Hills. So just be careful if you're driving in those areas or about to drive in those areas. Here's a big picture. We have this cold front move through. You can see that there's still snow ongoing for parts of the Northeast. A lot of the snow for D.C., Northern Virginia, Maryland, all of that has really tapered off. So really just left over with some rain here in the Mid-Atlantic and some areas of some flurries still hanging on. Now, that is not the big story of the day. That is far from the big story of the day. The big story is the Arctic blast that arrives for tonight into tomorrow. I'm watching for some single-digit wind chills late tonight into early tomorrow morning that will be still around as you're heading into work on Monday. So we have this weather impact alert in effect through this evening. It starts around 7 p.m. and lasts until 9 a.m. tomorrow for single-digit wind chills and the risk of pipes freezing. So this is your precaution and your time now to make sure those pipes are either up to standard, and if they're not, and you think they're older and they run the risk of freezing, make sure before you go to sleep tonight that you at least leave a little bit of a drip so that at least some water can continue to go through. We do not want your pipes freezing and bursting, because that will lead to bigger issues downstream, of course. And what you need to do in these cold weather conditions is practice your cold weather precautions. That means bundling up, have multiple layers if you're going to be out and about this evening after about 6 to 7 p.m. or if you're going to be heading to work, taking those kids to school. Make sure the kids have the proper layers on as well as they're heading to school tomorrow. And again, making sure we protect those 4 P's: people, pets, plants, and pipes. People, if you have elderly neighbors, if you know someone who may not have access to heat, make sure to check on them, give them the proper resources, or at least show them where to get resources from, so that they can make sure they stay warm overnight. Your pets, please make sure that any pets that you typically keep outside, they come indoors, because just as we as humans are sensitive to cold weather, so are pets, and they are going to be sensitive to this cold weather as well. 3, the plants. If you have potted plants that you think are susceptible to very cold temperatures, bring them inside. If you have plants that are rooted in the ground, Having the tarp over it can help to alleviate some of those freeze concerns there as well. And of course, you already talked about your pipes. Now, here's a look at everything here in terms of the cold weather advisory. That starts at 7 p.m. and it lasts until 9 a.m. on Monday. Wind chill, it could be as low as 3 degrees across Hampton Roads. 3 to 4 degrees is extremely, extremely cold. So just make sure that, again, you are wearing layers tomorrow. It will be a very cold day. Cold, cold, cold day. But even tonight, I know some people have to, sleep during the day, go to work at night. So you may have to also bundle up if you're heading into work if you work the third shift, because those cold temperatures will creep in. And you may not even see them coming, how quickly they will come in. But we're not the only ones underneath the cold weather alerts. You can see through Richmond, Raleigh, down into most of South Carolina, and then into the Mid-South and Deep South, all the way up into Chicago, and still a few cold weather advisories in effect for portions of Minnesota and North Dakota. So it's really a lot of places. I mean, we're talking millions of people underneath this cold weather advisory. Excuse me, sorry about that. But yes, cold weather advisory in effect for us. We also have, or it will be in effect tonight. We also do have a wind advisory that will go into effect at 1 p.m. So we have about a couple hours until this goes into effect. And that's for the eastern shore, Virginia Beach, and the Outer Banks. Wind gusts up to 50 miles per hour, sustained winds as high as 35. So it will be a very breezy day. And even if you're not included in this wind advisory, you still will have a windy day. It just won't meet that advisory criteria. Across the area, expect wind gusts as high as about 35 miles per hour for today. And again, remember, we get our wind chill from factoring in the actual air temperature plus the speed of the winds, and that's how it will feel to your body, the actual cold air. That is how we get wind chill. So again, looking from our Norfolk Botanical Garden camera, I feel like I'm seeing things fly, but I cannot tell what it is that is falling from the sky. But as you see the camera, okay, now I can kind of see a little bit. It does look like there's an isolated flurry right over the Norfolk Botanical Garden, but you see that it is still a dreary, wet start to our day. Temperatures right now have fallen again. We started off in Norfolk in the middle to upper 40s, and now we're sitting in the mid 30s. We've dropped 10 degrees in the past about 6 hours. When I started on daybreak came here at 5 a.m., we were seeing temperatures in the upper 40s, mid 40s. Now that we're here at 11 a.m., temperatures are now in the mid 30s. So we're continuing to see that temperature drop again all along this cold front that is just ushering in that blast of cooler air. And then another look for those who may not have joined me earlier from the start of the stream. We are seeing some areas of mixed precipitation, whether that's mixed rain and snow or mixed sleet and snow, especially across the south side. But I'll zoom in once again, and you can see that there's another band of some bigger snow flurries developing in parts of Chesapeake, Portsmouth, and Suffolk. So just be careful if you're about to head out on the roads, because you will encounter some slick spots from just the puddles that have built up from the rain this morning, and then ongoing snow that is not sticking to the ground. Also now seeing a little bit of snowy action going on near Bay Island, Little Haven, Mapleton, Virginia Beach, Oceanfront, Pungo, and even down into Deep Creek as well. So there are some areas on the south side that we're seeing some snow, and then for Newport News, Hampton, up through Grandview, Big Bethel, and Poquoson. I'm also watching for a few isolated flurries. On the western south side, a few flurries going on for Rushmere, and just to the east of Surrey. On the peninsula, as you get near Minchville, and then Williamsburg, also seeing some isolated flurries. So it's a cold day with cold winter weather, winter precipitation. But again, this is not my biggest concern. We may see up to an inch for places around the peninsulas, up to maybe 3/4 of an inch, so 3.75, sorry, excuse me, 0.75 inches of snow for portions of the south side. So let's talk about the rest of the day. Now, I will say the models have adjusted to the lack of abundant moisture, because earlier around this time it had widespread snow for the area. Now I'm only seeing just a sliver of that snow potential there around 11:15, 11:30 with this graph model, showing kind of what's happening now, moving further south and east and then pushing offshore. By the time we get to 1 p.m., that wind advisory goes into effect for the eastern shore, Virginia Beach, and the Outer Banks. Again, remember, wind gusts could be as high as about 30 miles per hour. We continue on through the day, and temperatures just continue to plummet. We'll be in the lower 30s to upper 20s around the peninsulas as you head toward the south side of northeastern North Carolina, middle to upper 30s. Now, I will say, even though it will be cold and even though it will be breezy, at least we will have sunshine here for the 757 and the 252 once we move this snow out of our hair. But it will be breezy at times, wind gusts as high as about 30 miles per hour, and that only picks up later on this evening. Wind gusts as high as 40 by about 7 to 8 o'clock tonight, and then temperatures continue to fall off. Teens and low 20s for the peninsulas. For the rest of the south side and northeastern North Carolina will be in the lower to mid 20s. So a very frigid night, but this doesn't even take into account how cold it will feel, because it does not take into account that wind chill and the winds that are adding on to that. Now, early on Monday morning, we may have a base streamer or two. What a base streamer is when you have these north or northeast winds. And I'll pull up this graphic so you can see the effects of bay effect snow. So bay effect snow is all about the setup. Once those winds come through and they start to pick up, those northwest winds will come sweeping over the Chesapeake Bay, and those winds will interact with the relatively warmer water below. Now, we say relatively because the water is not technically warm. It's not like the 70s and sometimes the 80s that we get during the summertime. These water temperatures are in the 40s and 50s. But because the air above it is so much colder than the air right above the bay, it's going to cause potentially those bay streamers or that bay effect snow. Then with just the right amount of moisture, you can see a few of those snow lines developing. And I want to go back to the model because you can actually see them on the model itself. So that's loading up right now. There we go. So we're good here. Northwest winds, and look how right around Melfa you see that streamer. Another one. I'm going to stop it right about here so that I can point them out. So you see right here, that's a bay streamer. And that bay streamer will produce some light snowfall accumulations, but you can see, and I'll even roll it back even further, you can see how they're just coming off of the eastern shore over and over again as those northwest winds continue to pull some moisture off of the bay, and because the coolness of the actual air could come down as snow. So just something to keep in mind. But again, the biggest deal is that the fact that we will have these very frigid wind chills. By 10 o'clock, feels like temperatures will be in the 5, 6, 7 degree range. So it will be an extremely cold night. Heading into the early morning tomorrow, feels like temperatures will still be around 5 to 10 degrees at best. It will be a brutal cold day. And when we start to get some more of those, any delays or closings because of tomorrow's brutal cold, we will definitely let you know. And you can always check on our running ticker below our forecast and everything on the linear channel, which is our regular TV channel, channel 13, where you can see which schools and government buildings are going to be delayed or closed in light of the big blast of cold air. Excuse me. So this takes you to Monday morning around 7 a.m. and you can see again still single digit to low teen wind chills. By the time we get to noon, we make significant improvements, but because we started off so cold, the improvements will still be cold, just not as cold. Feels like temperatures around noon on Monday will be in the teens and lower 20s. Especially if you live around the coast, you'll have feels like temperatures more in the teens. So still a cold afternoon, and that continues through Monday afternoon where highs will be back into the lower 40s. You add on the wind chill, it feels more like the middle to upper 20s. So overall, a very, very cold start to the week for us here in Hampton Roads and northeastern North Carolina. And then here's a look at the temperature trend over the next 10 days. And you can see that even though we have a really cold start to the week, we are going to be rebounding significantly by the end of the week. Each and every day through Thursday, we're at least climbing 5, maybe even 10 degrees. Monday, highs in the mid-30s. Tuesday, highs in the mid-40s. Wednesday, highs in the mid-50s. And then Thursday, we're in the lower 60s, which finally will put us above normal for this time of year after we've only been above normal just once this year. And then after that, it looks like we should stay in the 50s and maybe even slightly dip to the upper 40s through Christmas week. And not this Wednesday, but next Wednesday. That is the day before Christmas. So this is Christmas Eve. And you're seeing temperatures in the lower 50s. Not bad for this time of year and this geographic location. But I'm sure some people wanted some accumulating snow in winter just because we have had such an active pattern, an active winter weather pattern here just already. And we haven't even hit our winter solstice, which is on September, not September. I'm over here thinking about the fall equinox. The winter solstice is in December the 21st. So that is a week from today. So here's a little bit more about that solstice. The winter solstice is going to start at 10:03 a.m. Here, making it the shortest day and the longest night. But after that, each and every day we'll start to gain more sunlight. So for those who don't like to have the sunset around 4:45, we'll start to see some improvements through the end of December. And then really January, and mainly like late January, early February is when you're going to notice the bigger differences of, okay, we're starting to see more sunlight. The sun's starting to set after 5 p.m. But here's a look at your 5 to 7 day forecast, and you can see that for the first night of Hanukkah, it will be very cold and a little bit dreary. Again, after seeing the morning rain and morning snow, we still have some rain and snow ongoing at this point. Temperatures overnight will cool down to the 20s, but feel more like the single digits. And then as we get into the afternoon on Monday, still breezy, still cold. Temperatures in the mid-30s, but feeling more like the mid-20s. And then we see those significant improvements, as I just mentioned, on the long-range trend of seeing temperatures rising back to the lower 50s and 60s by Thursday and Friday. And we'll see the opportunity for showers late on Thursday into Friday morning. But again, our concern is not there now. Our concern right now is around the area seeing those temperatures falling and feeling more like the single digits. So let's go back to our radar, because it's always fun to do what we call initialization, which is where you take a snapshot of the radar and then you compare it to what the models are saying will happen. And if it lines up pretty well, that means initialization is good. If it doesn't pair very well, that means initialization is bad. So right now, initialization is pretty good. It definitely fell back on the higher snowfall totals and coverage since this morning. And speaking of snowfall totals, let's take a look at what the snowfall outputs are saying right now. Here is the high resolution rapid refresh. This is a short range model. We like short range models in these cases because they do a good job of analyzing today, tonight, tomorrow, maybe the next day. That's about it. And so the accuracy of those forecasts is definitely higher when you use the high resolution model. But taking you through your Sunday, the high resolution model says we may get 1/10 of an inch. That's about it, which makes sense because we're barely seeing any snow at the moment. Here's the graph model, and the graph model is another short range model, but this one has been crafted in-house. So this is not something that is something that's globally used, like the American model or the European model. But yes, this is our in-house model, and you can see that it's still only picking up maybe 1/10 of an inch for certain areas, mainly grassy areas, but that's about it. Let's look at the GFS and see if it's corrected itself. It definitely went down in numbers. It had about an inch to an inch and a half here in Norfolk. I really did think that was overdoing it, but now you can see that it brought it down to 1/10 of an inch or 2/10 of an inch for the eastern shore and the Outer Banks, and the rest of the area is seeing less than an inch. So overall, no significant snow. It's all about this weather impact alert for the frigid temperatures. Again, this lasts for this evening through Monday morning for that risk of those bitter wind chills. Wind chills or feels like temperatures as low as 4 or 5 degrees. Some places may even be 3 degrees for feels like temperatures late tonight. And then, of course, we're watching to make sure that none of those pipes freeze, and hopefully we don't have any pipes burst and any water damage at this point. Of course, we keep saying it over and over here at 13 News Now. Bundle up and just make sure to check on your loved ones during these very, very cold times. One more look at the cold weather advisory that starts at 7 p.m., lasts until 9 a.m., and wind chills could be as low as about 4 degrees. As we get into your Sunday into Monday, winds will start to pick up. We do have wind alerts, wind advisory in effect from 1 p.m. through 7 a.m. for the eastern shore, Virginia Beach, and the Outer Banks, as winds could gust up to about 50 miles per hour in those areas. And then again, one last look, and this is a much better view of the flurries going on here in Norfolk from our Norfolk Botanical Garden. You can see the snow coming down now. We may have a few accumulations around the area, but again, anything that we do accumulate will be very light in nature, and I think that most of it will build up on those areas that were more grassy, that have a higher vegetation. So just be careful if you're heading out on the roads, but no problem areas at this point. Just seeing the snow come down now from the Norfolk Botanical Garden. But otherwise, we are waiting for this cold blast, and you can see the mix of rain and snow now, and we're seeing this cold blast from this cold front that's rolling through now. The Weather Service has said in their discussion that we're going to see this huge Arctic blast, and this blast will cause temperatures to drop into the single digits. And that's pretty much about it. Struggling to climb back near freezing by tomorrow afternoon. So a very, very cold day, night and day for us here in Hampton Roads and in northeastern North Carolina. Now, I will be back at 1 p.m. to walk you through the rest of your day. That's also when our wind advisory goes into effect. So I'll talk more about that, give you a look at winds, see if we still have any snow going on. Otherwise, we'll be focused on that weather impact alert that starts tonight at 7 p.m. for that cold weather advisory, as feels like temperatures will plummet to the teens and single digits tonight. But for now, I'm meteorologist Taylor Stephenson, and I will see you back here in about an hour and a half at 1 p.m.